Hi, I'm Mark with DIY Ready, and this is a pallet smokehouse. We built this thing out of a pile of old pallets and about $100 worth of materials. The list you can find on DIYready.com. We got a tin roof, a couple of vents, top and bottom, so the air can flow through. We're 36 square feet on the inside. You can smoke a whole hog or a whole deer. We got 4 racks. You got space to put sausage at the top if you hang a dowel. You got a big area for your firebox underneath. And we're lined with aluminum foil so it doesn't bleed out everywhere. Let's go ahead and get started, shall we? So, before we go ahead and get started, let's look at some of the tools and materials we're going to be working with. You're going to need a drill gun. Cordless is better, obviously. Some kind of a saw, a skill saw, chop saw, table saw. All of this job can be done with a skill saw. You're going to need a pair of metal snips, stapler, tape measure, goes right there, and drill bits. We're going to be using 2 different sizes of screws. We're going to be using a 2.5-inch screw and an 1.25 inch screw. So 2 different bits. Now a little bit about the screws. This is going to be outdoors, so you're going to want to be picking a very good screw, an outdoor screw. This is a plastic coated decking screw, and if you can see this, it is a Torx bit, which I will only use Torx bits from here on out. The best screw I've ever found. The 1/4 inch, same thing. They're plastic coated and they self-bite at the bottom. However, we are going to be pre-drilling and countersinking everything we do on this project because we're going to be working with used materials. So our pre-drill, we're going to be using an 1/8 inch bit or drill bit and a countersink. For materials, we have a handle, 2 hinges, our pen. We have some heavy-duty tin foil, extra strength stuff, and pallet wood. So let's talk about pallet wood. We're doing this on the cheap, absolutely. As many free materials as we possibly can. There's some challenges with working with free materials, so let's go ahead and talk about those. First, it's not pretty. It is very rough wood. They're not sanded. There's a lot of splinters that can be had, so have your gloves on. And anytime you're using your saw, make sure you put eye protection and ear protection in. Now, the end of the pallets, the wood typically splits here. So you have splits here. This is where it was joined in the center, splits in the center. And this is where I cut it off, so that's a clean edge. Anytime that you have pallets are typically 42 to 48 inches across. We're building 3 foot by 3 foot. We did that on purpose because first we want to get the square footage, but second we want to be able to cut as many of these split ends off on both sides and still have good wood in between. Now you're going to have real challenges on some of this wood. It's going to have long splits in it. You can see that. You're going to have discolorations and broken edges. You're just going to have to work with that. It's really hard to find really pristine materials. So beggars can't be choosers, so we're going to use the best of what we've got. Now, the wood that you see represented here, this stack of wood, and this stack of wood here, all of this is about 20 to 30 pallets. And I picked and chose the best parts I could out of those 30 pallets, roughly. Now, when you're dissecting pallets and you're breaking them apart, there is a good way to do it and there are bad ways to do it. The only way that I'm ever going to recommend is that you cut it off on both sides, at both ends of the pallet with a reciprocating saw, and you're going to want to use a bimetal blade, a nice, good, thick one, so it will cut wood and metal, just in case you hit any nails. If you use a wood blade, you're going to destroy that blade. And obviously, you're going to want to keep your prettier parts, the nicer pieces that you find, for the front of your piece. So our other pieces here, we were lucky enough to find a couple of pallets that had some good 2x4s in them. Now this 2x4, as you can see, has got a big chunk broken out of it and another chunk broken out of it there. Still a good 2x4, and we're going to go ahead and use that. But typically when you get pallets, this is what you're going to find. If you're finding pallets that are 4 foot or 5 foot long, this is the cutout that the forklift picks up. So in your design and when you're working on this, you're going to try and work around those. But this is typically the 2x4 that you're going to get, and it's not really even a 2x4. These measure out to be like 1 2/16 or 1/8, and they're not very square. This kind of wood is going to warp. It's not straight, so you're going to end up with something imperfect. Now, we're building a smokehouse, and it doesn't have to be perfect. What it needs to be is it needs to be something that will smoke meat. Now, because of that, that's where we're going to come back to our tinfoil. We're going to line the inside of this with heavy-duty tinfoil. First thing it does is it makes it more airtight, so smoke's not pouring out all of the cracks, because with this kind of wood you're going to have all kinds of cracks. There's just no way around it. The second thing it does is it makes it a little bit more fire retardant. One of the reasons why we went 3 foot by 3 foot on this design is so that you could have your firebox in the center of the smokehouse, and you're keeping the fire away from the edges of the smokehouse. Makes it safer. The bigger the size, the better. Well, plus you're going to be able to fit almost a whole animal in this thing. So lastly, we have our netting material. This is the screen that we're going to be using, and we're going to be using aluminum, and this is very important. You do not want to be using galvanized screen. You can use raw metal screen, but anything with galvanizing on it, when it heats up, is highly toxic. So be aware of that. That's why we're using aluminum. And then we just have a simple piece of tin roof to go on the top. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so here we are with our first two pieces. Now I've got this labeled right side front and right side back. In your cut list, you're going to see that there's different lengths, obviously, and you're going to use materials that are appropriate length. If you don't have the right length, like if you're short, then what you're going to do is you're going to take two pieces and you're going to sister them together. What that means is you're going to take two pieces like this, and then you're going to nail another piece here to make a longer board. Now, sistering isn't as strong, but this doesn't have to be very load bearing. So you can get away with that. You just want to make sure that when you sister your parts together, you're not getting in the way of your racks, which is what we're about to do right now. This design, the racks are the structure themselves. So the parts that hold the racks in place end up being the ribbing to hold the frame together. So what we have is our 6-foot board here, and we went ahead and marked it at 24, 36, 44, and 52. The reason why we did this is because we want to have enough space at the bottom for our smoke box so that it's not too close to the meat or the wood, and then between we wanted to have enough space for bigger pieces of meat, and then obviously smaller pieces of meat as we went to the top. And we did leave a good gap at the top so that you could hang sausage or something like that on a dowel that you put it across. We didn't actually put a dowel in this one, but you could very easily. So again, that's 24, 36, 44, and 52. Now, if you wanted to do different spacing, absolutely. The minimum requirement for us was 24 inches of clearance from the base of our firebox, or so that our firebox had enough clearance so that we're not cooking the meat with too much heat. So because that's where we started, that's how we got the rest of our measurements. Now if your firebox is smaller or bigger, you're obviously going to want to move your racks to the right position for that. So we did 24 in there, and then we did it on the other side too. Measure twice, cut once. So you want to make sure that you measure these and get them marked exactly where you want them to be. First, that'll keep you square and make sure that your racks slide in and out nicely. So here is our 33-inch piece, and this is a 2x4 cut in half. We were lucky enough to find a couple of good 2x4s, so that's a pretty good piece of wood. Now, if you weren't using a 2x4, you could be using some of this, but you're going to want to have a thicker spot like this as opposed to this, so that your rack has something to rest on. All right, so what you're going to do is you're going to take your board, you're going to put it on, and you're going to pre-drill each hole with your 1/8 inch bit. Let me find that. 1/8 inch drill bit right there. The reason why we want to pre-drill every one of these boards is because pallets are typically pretty dry wood. And if you try and sink a screw through, they'll just split right apart. Now, if you were building this out of other material, you wouldn't necessarily need to pre-drill. So pre-drill each hole and then countersink that, and we'll go ahead and do that on a couple of these. But what we're going to do is we're going to take our line here, we're going to put our board on, we're going to use one of these as a guide on the back side for our spacing, right there, because another board lays here. And we'll square that up right there. Make sure you're even, both sides. And go ahead and screw your part in. So, we'll go ahead and sink a couple of screws here. All right, there. Okay. And on the other side, we've got our line here. We want to make sure that we come up square to it. And we want to make sure we're square on the back edge. So I'm going to go ahead, line that out a little bit. Make sure we're even. Make sure we have enough space for a board here. And measure across. We want to be, so our measurement at the bottom should be 34 5/8 or 34 1/2. Let's do right there. The problem is our wood is warped a little bit, so nothing's going to be perfect here. We'll get it as close as we can. All right, so 34 5/8 at the bottom, and we want to be 34 5/8 at here also. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tack this in, and what that will do is it'll square us up. This is the part where you want to make sure that you're the most square when you're screwing this together, and then you can adjust as you go up, as if you get out. As you can see, this board here has a bow going this way a little bit and bows up this way. So we're just going to work with it. So we just finished screwing in all our boards here. You just want to make sure that you stay as square as you possibly can and stick as close to your lines as you possibly can. Again, this isn't going to be perfect because of the wood that we're working with, but you can get as close as you can get. So we're going to do this. This is the right side, and then we're going to do the left side. Make sure that you reverse this so that you have your rack hangers on the inside.